If, while you're watching this, you start to hear a new sound in your room, a low hum in the wall, your floor buzzing under your feet, your glass trembling for no reason, don't pause the video and don't say anything. Just listen. This isn't a ghost story about a house or a road. It's about a quarry that gave the earth a throat, a place where echoes don't come back the way you send them. They come back slower, deeper, and sometimes they add your name. The man in this story brought one humming stone home, and the sound followed him into motel walls, into pipes, into recordings that played his own voice back to him from places he'd never been. So, if, by the end of this video, that hum starts to sync with your heartbeat, whatever you do, don't answer it, because once the rock learns your rhythm, it doesn't let it go. Welcome. You have entered a spooky universe where stories never sleep and shadows never fade. Let's blend your like and subscribe into Spooky Universe. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? And what time is it for you right now? I've always found that question fascinating, because no matter where you are, when the lights go out and the night grows cold, the same darkness finds us all. Let the shadows rise and rule. There was a hum in the rock long before anyone learned to fear it. My father used to say that the earth never stops speaking. It only waits for someone foolish enough to listen. He was that fool, and maybe now I am too. I was 17 the summer the quarry closed. They called it Hollow Quarry because of the way sound carried there. You could shout into the pit, and the echo would come back slower, stretched thin, like it had traveled through something alive. 3 men disappeared in 1 week, and the company poured concrete over the main shaft. By fall, the fences were up, the signs nailed down, and our town went quiet. Dad never said what happened down there. He just stopped sleeping. Sometimes I'd find him on the porch at dawn, hands covered in white dust, staring toward the hills. When I asked if he missed the work, he'd shake his head and mutter, "Some things dig back. He died last winter. Heart, they said. I was the one who cleaned out the house." In the attic, I found a small box wrapped in canvas. Inside lay a chunk of pale stone no bigger than my hand, smooth as river glass on one side, rough on the other, and a folded page from an old ledger. The words were faint, written in pencil. "Keep it quiet. It sings." I kept it on my desk for weeks, telling myself it was a relic, nothing more. Then the humming started. At first I thought it was the fridge, a low vibration that came and went with the wind. But when I moved the stone to the other side of the room, the hum followed. Late at night I'd feel it through the floorboards, a pulse, soft but steady, matching my heartbeat until I couldn't tell which was mine. The dreams came next. Always. The same place, the quarry at dusk. The pit filled with water that reflected nothing. My father stood at the edge, holding his helmet in both hands. He would turn toward me and open his mouth, but the sound that came out wasn't words. It was the same low vibration as the stone. After a week of that, I drove back to town. The roads were emptier than I remembered. The old houses collapsed under vines. When I reached the ridge above the quarry, mist covered everything below, a white sea trapped in the bowl of rock. The gate hung open. The warning signs had rusted to orange ghosts of letters. I should have stopped there, but the hum was stronger now, as if the stone in my pocket was answering something underground. I followed it down the gravel road until the ground leveled out and the pit opened before me. The place looked dead gray stone, Rainwater pooled like oil. No sound but the occasional crack of cooling rock. I crouched near the edge and dropped a pebble. The echo didn't come back. Instead, there was a faint breath, drawn in rather than released. That was when I saw movement below, a faint ripple spreading across the surface, though there was no wind. The hum vibrated through my ribs. When I took the stone from my pocket, it was warm. The water stirred again, forming concentric circles that widened and faded into silence. In their center, light bloomed pale, like moonlight seen through ice. It pulsed once, twice, and with each pulse, the rock under my feet seemed to inhale. I stepped back. The ground felt hollow, soft enough to give slightly under my boots. Somewhere far beneath, something answered the hum. I didn't remember leaving. One moment I was at the edge. The next, I was in the truck, halfway up the hill, engine idling, hands shaking. The stone sat on the passenger seat, faintly glowing along its cracks. When I touched it, the light died. That night I stayed in a roadside motel. The hum followed me there, seeping through the walls. The clerk in the next room pounded once on the plaster and yelled for quiet, but the vibration only grew stronger until my water glass trembled itself off the nightstand. Around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps outside, heavy, deliberate, crunching gravel. Then a knock on the door, 3 slow raps. I looked through the peephole. No one. Just the parking lot and the dark outline of the hills. When I turned back to the bed, there was dust on the pillow. Fine, white quarry dust. I went back the next morning. Fog still clung to the pit, swirling in slow spirals as if stirred by breath. At the far side of the quarry, a small shack stood half-collapsed the old foreman's office. Inside, sunlight leaked through the roof, illuminating stacks of yellowed papers. On the wall hung a map of the tunnels. Half of it had been burned away. Across what remained, someone had written in red grease pencil, "Do not answer." Beneath that, in smaller handwriting, almost an afterthought, "It remembers the ones who listen." The hum grew louder. It wasn't coming from the pit anymore, but from the walls around me. The boards shivered, dust drifting down in slow motion. I stepped outside and the air stilled instantly. For a long minute, nothing moved. Then, faint and clear, a voice echoed up from the depths of the quarry. "Eli, my name." I froze. It wasn't my father's voice, but it carried the same tired rasp. When I leaned over the edge, the water below rippled once. A shape floated just under the surface, a pale outline, face up, eyes open. Then the light shifted and it was gone. I dropped the stone. It sank without a sound. For the first time in months, the hum stopped. I thought that was the end of it. But as I turned to climb back toward the truck, the echo returned, faint but rising. Only now it carried words, layered so deep that I could barely separate them. Some things dig back. I ran. When I reached the ridge, sunlight had burned away most of the mist, revealing the pit in full. From up there I could see that the water no longer filled the bottom. A spiral of pale rock cut through at fresh stone, newly exposed, curling down into shadow. The quarry wasn't dead after all. It was opening. I waited on the ridge until the sun slid behind the western bluff, watching the light creep across the pit, like a hand withdrawing from something it didn't want to touch. When the last line of gold left the rock, the hum began again, low at first, pulsing from inside the newly bared spiral. Each pulse seemed to lift dust into the air, a faint shimmer rising and settling back into silence. I don't remember deciding to go down. My body moved before my thoughts caught up, boots crunching on gravel as I followed the winding path toward the center. The deeper I went, the cooler the air became. Every breath tasted like old water and iron. The walls around me were wet with condensation that glowed faintly, as if the stone itself remembered the light that had touched it centuries ago. Halfway down, I found my father's helmet wedged between two slabs. The lamp on it was cracked, the battery long dead, but the strap was still damp. I touched it once, and the hum skipped, like a heartbeat missing a beat. Then it came back louder. The spiral ended in a flat shelf of stone that sloped into a narrow opening. From that hole, the vibration rose in steady waves. When I crouched beside it, the sound changed again, less a hum, more a breathing that matched mine for several seconds, before slipping ahead, as if it wanted me to follow. I switched on my flashlight and slid through the gap. The tunnel beyond was nothing like the quarry. It wasn't carved by tools. It had grown. The walls curved inward in smooth ripples, striations swirling around me like the inside of a seashell. Water dripped in slow rhythm somewhere ahead, echoing until each drop sounded like a distant footstep. After 10 yards, the passage widened into a chamber. In the beam of the light, I saw carvings, thousands of them, etched shallowly into the limestone. They weren't words, they were faces. Every one of them mouth open, eyes closed, tilted toward the ceiling as if singing. The hum came from those mouths. I backed away until my shoulder brushed a colder patch of stone. When I turned, I realized it wasn't stone at all. It was flesh, pale, leathery, stretching seamlessly into the wall, as if someone had been pressed into it and fossilized there. The shape was almost human, hands folded across its chest, head bowed. Dust sifted from the ceiling as the quarry trembled again. The flashlight flickered once and went out. For a heartbeat, there was total darkness. Then, the walls began to glow. Every carved face lit from within, each mouth pulsing with faint white fire, and the chamber filled with a chorus of low tones that blended into one vast sound. I dropped to my knees. The vibration pushed through the stone, into my ribs, into my teeth. It was language, but not any I knew. And under all of it, a single familiar phrase surfaced, my father's voice woven through the others. "Keep it quiet." I covered my ears. It didn't help. The sound wasn't entering through the air. It was rising through the rock, through me. Something behind the wall shifted a slow heave, like lungs filling after a long sleep. When the light of the faces dimmed, the silence that followed felt wrong, heavier than noise. I turned back toward the tunnel and saw a faint glow moving along its curve, approaching fast. For a moment I thought it was my flashlight rolling away. Then it straightened, lifted, and I saw the outline of a man holding a lantern. The glass of the lantern shimmered with the same pale fire that had filled the mouths on the wall. He stopped a few steps away. The light caught his face, and I saw the impossible. My father, younger than I remembered, eyes blank, the skin of his neck streaked with gray dust. "You dropped it," he said, and held out the chunk of stone I'd thrown into the pit. It was glowing from inside, faint but alive. I couldn't speak. He stepped closer, pressing the stone into my palm. It was warm, too warm for rock, and when I tried to let go, my fingers wouldn't open. "You shouldn't have listened," he said. Then he smiled, slow and sad. They never stopped. The light in the lantern flared white, and the chamber vanished in it. When the glare faded, I was standing at the bottom of the quarry again, alone. The spiral path behind me was gone. Only smooth walls remained. The water had returned, rising quietly around my boots. I looked for the stone, but my hand was empty. The warmth was still in my palm, though, beating faintly, like a second heart. I climbed until my legs gave out, and I collapsed on the ridge. From up there, the pit looked normal. Again, flat water, no spiral, no light. The wind had finally returned, but carried on it, faint and steady, was that same hum. It wasn't coming from below anymore. It was coming from inside the stone ridge beneath my feet. That closes part 2, the spiral below. In part 3, the echo of stone, Eli will learn what the quarry truly unearthed and what it means when the earth decides to remember you. I don't remember the drive back to town. When I came to, the truck was parked behind my father's old house, engine ticking as it cooled. The hum was still with me, quiet now, like the sound that hides in your ears after a long concert. Each breath made it stronger. Inside the house, everything was dust and silence. I went straight to the attic where I'd first found the stone box. The floorboards were bare. The box was gone. In its place lay a single photograph, curled at the edges. It showed my father and 3 other miners, standing at the edge of the quarry, their helmets tilted toward the camera. All of them had their mouths open, as if mid-word, and, faintly behind them, barely visible in the grain, another row of faces looked out from the rock. I dropped the picture and heard the hum echo inside the rafters. It moved like a breath through the wood. When I touched the wall, it shuddered just once, as if something behind it had adjusted itself to get comfortable. I left the house before the sound could finish forming. I drove until the road ended at the outskirts of town, where the company had built a concrete monument to the quarry's history. A plaque, a map, a low wall of white stone blocks set in a perfect circle. The air around it was warm, even in the cold wind. When I laid my hand on the stone, the vibration leapt up my arm and filled my chest. The words on the plaque blurred until all I could read were the last 2 lines, dedicated to those who listened. I stepped back. The wind cut out. The hum became clear speech, not from the monument, but from the ground itself. Eli Roth stay. I turned, but the Roth street behind me was empty. The shop windows reflected only the circle of stone and me standing inside it. In the reflection, my mouth was open, moving with the sound though I wasn't speaking. The light in the windows flickered. For a heartbeat, I saw my father's reflection standing beside mine, his lips moving in the same rhythm. I ran, past the monument, through the empty streets, until the hills opened again. By the time I reached the quarry ridge, night had fallen. The sky was starless, the pit below darker than shadow. Yet I could see the shape of the spiral again, faintly glowing under the surface, wider now, breathing. The hum filled the air so thickly it bent my balance. I dropped to my knees and pressed my palms against the ground. The vibration matched the rhythm in my chest perfectly. It wasn't echoing me anymore. It was sinking me. Then, faintly, from below, came the scraping sound of stone sliding against stone. The spiral shifted, turning slowly, exposing new layers of rock as it rotated. From those layers, faces began to appear fresh, colorless, eyes still closed. One of them was mine. The likeness was perfect down to the scar on my chin. Its lips moved once. "Keep it quiet." The words reverberated through every wall of the pit until they lost meaning and became nothing but tone. The spiral completed another turn, and for a moment, the whole quarry glowed from within. The light rose through the cracks, spreading along the ridge, under the grass, under the road, toward the town. The earth was remembering. I stumbled back to the truck and drove toward the highway. Halfway there, the radio came alive, though it wasn't on. A single sustained note filled the cab. Then voices joined it, hundreds, all singing the same low chord. My father's among them. Mine too. I opened the door and jumped before I could think. The truck rolled forward without me, its headlights shrinking until they disappeared over the hill. The sound followed. It's been 6 days since then. I'm writing this from a motel 2 counties away. Every object around me vibrates. The bed frame, the glass, the air. When I close my eyes, I see the spiral turning slowly, endlessly, each new face forming from the stone. The hum has changed pitch. It matches the beat of my pulse exactly. Sometimes, when I touch a wall, it answers back. I know now what my father meant when he said some things, dig back. We thought we were carving the quarry, shaping it to our will. But all along it was shaping us, chiseling voices into the rock, keeping them until it needed to speak again. I don't think the quarry ever took anyone. It just taught them how to listen. If you ever find yourself near Hollow Quarry and you hear a faint vibration under your feet, don't follow it. Don't hum along, because once the stone knows your rhythm, it never lets it go. It remembers the sound of you. And someday, when the hills are quiet again, it will start to sing your name. Story number 2. The first time I went down into the quarry, I thought it was just a job. A weekend contract, quick pay, easy hours. No one mentioned the smell. They called it Hollow Ridge Aggregate on the paperwork, but locals just said the Echo Pit. It had been shut down for 10 years after a collapse buried half the crew. Now the company wanted to reopen it. They needed a surveyor to test the air and check for stability before heavy machines moved in. That surveyor was me. I told myself it was safe, a contained site, fenced, with access roads and warning signs. But standing at the rim, looking down into that bowl of black rock, I felt small in a way I hadn't since childhood. There was no sound. Even the wind seemed to stop at the edge. If silence could stare, that place had eyes. The security guard at the gate, a gray-haired man with shaking hands, handed me a flashlight that looked 20 years old. "Don't go near the third shaft," he said. "Why not?" He looked past me toward the pit. "Because it answers." I laughed, thinking he was joking. He didn't laugh back. I went in around noon. The sunlight only reached a few meters down before fading to a dull gray. By the time I hit the lowest ledge, the light from above was a memory. I could see the tire tracks of old trucks, the broken scaffolding, and the black mouth of the third shaft yawning ahead of me. I was supposed to map airflow and check oxygen levels, but the meter in my hand kept glitching, numbers jumping, needle twitching. I thought maybe there was a magnetic anomaly from the rock. Then I heard the first sound, a single knock from deep in the shaft. I froze, waited, and it came again. 3 knocks, then silence. When you work underground, sound can play tricks. It echoes, folds on itself, turns whispers into footsteps. I told myself that's all it was. Still, I called into the dark. "Anyone down there?" My voice rolled away, swallowed almost instantly. No echo came back, just the faint scent of wet earth and rust. Then, so softly I thought I'd imagined it a reply, "Don't." The word came from behind me. When I turned, the shaft was empty. The beam of the flashlight caught dust drifting in slow spirals, like the air itself was breathing. I kept working, forcing myself to take readings, jot notes, anything to stay focused. But the knocks kept coming irregular. Sometimes close, sometimes distant. Once I felt a vibration through the ground, like someone tapping on the rock from below my boots. After an hour, I decided to leave. But the path up wasn't the same. I could see the ridge, daylight above, but the ledges looked different, steeper, closer together, almost as if the walls had folded inward. That's when I heard the voice again. This time, it was my own. "Keep going." The words came from the shaft behind me. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. When I finally turned, a light flickered deep inside. The tunnel, a pale, bluish glow, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. I should have run. Instead, I stepped toward it. The ground gave way after 5 paces. One moment I was standing, the next I was sliding down a slope of loose gravel and dust. I fell maybe 20 feet, landing hard enough to knock the breath out of me. The flashlight cracked but stayed on. Its beam caught the outline of another tunnel, wider than the rest, curving downward. The walls were wet, streaked with black minerals that shimmered when I moved the light. And the glow, that strange, living glow, was coming from far below. I took one step. The air changed instantly. Warmer, thicker. I could taste metal and something sweet, like rotting flowers. The deeper I went, the more I saw things embedded in the stone. Not fossils, not tools. Shapes, rough outlines of hands, arms, faces pressed into the rock like they'd been swallowed mid-scream. I told myself it was an illusion. Then one of them blinked. I ran, scraping my shoulder on the tunnel wall. But the stone felt soft, almost spongy under my hand. The glow ahead grew brighter until the whole tunnel seemed to pulse with it. And there at the end was a cavern filled with water. Perfectly still, perfectly round. The light came from beneath its surface. When I shone the flashlight into it, I saw that the bottom wasn't stone, but glass thick, transparent. And behind it, something was moving. A shape the size of a car, slow and steady, shifting like it was breathing. Then the knocking began again, faster this time, echoing through the chamber. I realized with horror it wasn't random. It was matching my heartbeat. The glass cracked. I turned to run back, but the tunnel had changed. The slope behind me had closed, the path twisting upward into darkness. Something heavy moved through the water behind me. I could hear it, the drag of a vast body against rock. A voice rose from below, hundreds of whispers all at once. Stay. The air shivered with it. The sound wasn't just around me anymore. It was inside me, shaking my bones. I dropped the flashlight and scrambled upward through the dark. Hands brushed my legs, cold, wet, impossibly strong pulling, not hard enough to stop me, but enough to remind me they were there. When I burst through to the surface again, the daylight nearly blinded me. I didn't stop running until I reached my truck. I tried to report what I saw, but the company brushed it off. No record of a third shaft, they said. They sent another team 2 weeks later. They never came back. The quarry flooded after that, overnight. Locals say the water still glows sometimes, especially when the wind dies and the night is clear. I can still feel the vibration sometimes, deep in my chest, especially when I'm near a stone. And if I listen long enough, I hear that faint knocking again, 3 times. Then, silence. The Echo Pit Part 1. The Descent Welcome. You have entered a spooky universe where stories never sleep and shadows never fade. Let's blend your like and subscribe into Spooky Universe. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? And what time is it for you right now? I've always found that question fascinating, because no matter where you are, when the lights go out and the night grows cold, the same darkness finds us all. Let the shadows rise and rule. The first time I saw the pit from the ridge, it didn't look dangerous, just a wound in the earth, the edges softened by 10 years of rain and weeds. But even from up there, I could feel the air coming out of it warmer than the wind, like the ground was exhaling. The company's email had made it sound simple. 1-day safety audit, single personnel, daylight only. I'd done 100 of those. Still, when I parked beside the rusted gate and heard the hum of insects die in the same second, I should have turned back. A guard waited in a folding chair by a trailer that served as the site office. He had a smoker's cough and a face line from years in the sun. "Gas check?" he asked, not looking up. "Yeah," I said. He handed me a battered flashlight and a clipped warning. "Stay out of the third shaft." I asked why. He rubbed his jaw, as if deciding whether to answer. "Because it still talks," he said finally. The quarry dropped tier by tier, pale rock turning darker the deeper it went. The first ledge was covered in puddles that smelled of rust. Every time I moved, pebbles rattled down and kept rattling long after they should have stopped. The sound in that place didn't travel right. It wandered. I set up the air meter, logged the temperature, humidity, and carbon dioxide level. Everything is normal. Still, my chest felt tight. Maybe the pressure, maybe nerves. From the second ledge, I could see the sealed mouth of Shaft 1. A concrete slab sprayed with graffiti and crossed with warning tape that flapped like old flags. Shaft 2 had collapsed on itself, nothing but a sinkhole of dark water. Shaft 3 was farther back, half hidden by scaffolding that looked ready to fall. It yawned open, black and dry. I told myself I'd just take a reading near the entrance. 2 minutes. The ground inside was powdery, like ash. Every step sank an inch. My light caught old tool marks on the walls, parallel grooves, hand-cut, not machine. The tunnel curved, narrowing. When I turned to look back, daylight was already a small circle. Something cracked behind me. Rock shifting, maybe. But the sound was rhythmic. 3 knocks, a pause, 3 more. Too deliberate. "Hello?" My own voice came back late and thin. No reply. just the echo sliding away until it sounded like it was whispering the word low, low, low. I raised the gas meter. It spiked for 1 second, oxygen dip, then steadied. I kept moving, telling myself I was chasing airflow data. Truth was, I didn't want to turn my back on that. Dark. 10 meters in, I found the first helmet. It was half buried in dust. The lamp shattered. I brushed it off and the smell hit metal, damp earth, and something faintly sweet, like wet plaster. When I lifted it, a tuft of hair came with it, brittle and gray. I dropped it fast. I decided that was enough. I turned to leave, but the passage behind me looked longer than before. The circle of daylight was gone. I took 3 steps, and the beam of my flashlight dimmed, flickered, came back weaker. The air had thickened, like breathing through cloth. I shouted again, but the echo split 1 half ahead, 1 behind, overlapping. For a second, it sounded like 2 people answering. Then the knock started again, farther in, drawing me deeper. I didn't want to go, but every time I paused, the silence pressed on my ears until I moved just to break it. The tunnel bent left, then down, and the knocks turned into scraping. I followed the sound until the floor dropped away on a steep ramp. At the bottom, the beam of my light hit water, perfectly flat, perfectly still. That's where I stopped. Because something about that water was wrong, it reflected nothing. Not the light, not the walls, not me, just black. I whispered 1 word, enough, and the water answered with a whisper of its own. My own voice, perfectly timed, repeating the word back at me. I climbed out fast, half crawling. By the time I reached open air, the sun had shifted low. The guard was gone. Only his chair remained, 1 leg broken, lying on its side. I threw the gear in my truck and drove until the pit was a dot in the mirror. That night, though, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that whisper again, sliding under the door, curling around the bed. Enough. Part 2. The resonance. For 3 days, I tried to tell myself it was exhaustion. Too much caffeine, too little sleep, nerves, replaying the job. But by the 4th night, I knew the sound was real. It started as a faint tremor in the walls of my apartment, just a vibration at first, like a truck passing in the street below. Then it began to sync with ordinary things. My fridge. My phone is charging on the nightstand. Even the heartbeat I could feel when I pressed a hand against my chest. All of them pulsing in the same slow rhythm I'd heard underground. I told myself to forget the quarry. But the company hadn't paid yet, and something in me needed the check to feel like closure. So I called the field office. No answer. When I checked the news feed from the region, there was nothing about Hollow Ridge Aggregate, no record of any current permits, no mention of a safety survey, as if the whole project had evaporated. That night, the knocking returned. 3 beats, pause, 3 more. They came from the kitchen wall, exactly where the concrete met the old brick. I hit the wall with my fist. The sound stopped. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown, still talking. I tried to call back, but the number was blank. No area code, no history. Sleep finally took me around dawn. When I woke, fine white dust covered the kitchen counter. I brushed it away, and my fingers came back chalky, smelling of rust and rain. I hadn't been near the quarry for a week, but that smell, wet stone and iron, filled the air again. I left the apartment and spent the day driving trying to outpace the hum that seemed to sit behind every sound. At sunset, I found myself on the same county road that led toward Hollow Ridge. I hadn't meant to go there, but my hands kept the wheel steady, the way muscle memory guides you back to something unresolved. The gate was gone, only the rusted frame remained. Beyond it, the pit looked deeper than before, darker, as if the ground had settled another few meters. Even from the truck, I could hear that faint thrum in my ears. I didn't go down right away. I parked on the ridge and watched the shadows crawl. The quarry was silent, except for one sound, the rhythmic splash of water somewhere below. No birds, no wind. I took the company flashlight from the seat beside me, even though I told myself I wouldn't use it. Halfway down, the noise changed. It wasn't splashing. It was something metallic, tapping gently against rock. When I reached the first ledge, I saw the source. A canister, one of mine from the survey, lay at the edge of a puddle. Someone had carved words into its side with a knife. "Heard you." I stepped back so quickly, I nearly slipped. The puddle beside the canister rippled once, though there was no breeze. That's when I noticed the footprints. Bare, adult-sized, leading from the water toward the tunnel of Shaft 3. Each print shimmered faintly, the water inside unmoving, like glass poured over them. The air was heavier the deeper I went. Even breathing felt wrong. Too slow, too deep, like the quarry was pulling the air from me rather than giving it. When the flashlight beam crossed the wall near the mouth of the shaft, I saw fresh scratches in the rock, parallel lines, fingernails. Something metallic glinted between the grooves. It was a fragment of my own safety badge, bent in half. I turned to climb back out, but the path was darker than it should have been. Clouds had rolled in above the rim, cutting what was left of daylight. Then, I heard the sound again knocking, but this time, it came from the ledge just above me. 3 beats. Pause. 3 beats. It wasn't echo. It was coming from inside the rock. I pressed a hand against the wall. It vibrated beneath my palm, soft at first, then stronger. The sensation climbed up my arm until my fingers went numb. The flashlight flickered, throwing quick snapshots of the pit, the puddles, the canister, the footprints. In one of those flickers, the footprints were gone. In the next, they were behind me. I climbed fast, half running, half scrambling until the surface light returned. By the time I reached the truck, I could hardly breathe. The air outside felt thin, wrong. When I slammed the door, the vibration stopped instantly, like someone had cut power to a speaker. I started the engine and drove until my hands stopped shaking. The quarry shrank in the mirrors, a black wound disappearing under the hills. Back home, I threw every piece of equipment into the trash meter, gloves, boots. But the next morning, the boots were back by the door, clean, soles damp. Part 3, the collapse. The noise followed me for 2 weeks after I left. At first, I thought it was tinnitus, that low hiss after loud work sites. Then it began to pulse again. 3 beats, a pause, 3 more. Always that pattern. I could hear it under the hum of my refrigerator, in the pause between windshield wipers. It was like my whole world had learned a new rhythm. When the company finally called, they sounded nervous. The woman on the other end read a statement so quickly that I barely caught. The words site reassessment and safety audit redacted. I told her I still hadn't been paid. She said a check was in processing. Before I could ask about the others, She hung up. That same afternoon, 2 white trucks with the company logo passed through town, headed toward the ridge. By nightfall, there were helicopters over the pit, their searchlights cutting the dark. I watched from my porch. Even from that distance, I could hear the faint metallic knocking rise above the rotors. Then the lights blinked out, one by one. The sky stayed quiet after that. 3 days later, a stranger came to my door. He said he was from the State Mining Board. Though his badge looked printed on office paper, he asked routine questions, my survey notes, the air readings, any personal effects from the site. When I said I'd thrown everything away, he looked almost relieved. "Did you notice anything unusual before you left?" he asked. I told him about the knocking. He wrote nothing down, just kept nodding, eyes on the floor. When he left, he warned me not to discuss the quarry with anyone. "Contract confidentiality," he said. As his truck pulled away, I saw the back loaded with sound monitoring gear and a single body bag. That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened my laptop to listen to the raw recordings I'd made underground automatic field backups stored to the cloud. At first, there was only the hum of air sensors, my own footsteps, the occasional cough. Then, halfway through the second file, a faint voice whispered under the static, "Keep going." My breath caught. I remembered hearing that underground, the same phrase that had sounded like my own voice. But this time, there were 2 distinct layers, one normal pitch, one low, buried almost out of hearing. I slowed the file to half speed. The deeper voice said my name. The waveform on the screen pulsed in perfect rhythm to the knocks. Then the audio collapsed into a single drawn-out note that lasted exactly 13 seconds. When it ended, my speakers cracked with silence, a silence thick enough to feel. I deleted the files, shut the laptop, and sat in the dark. But from the apartment wall came a new sound. Faint at first, the creak of plaster shifting, the same 3-beat rhythm. 2 weeks later, I saw the headline, "State investigators missing after Hollow Ridgeside accident." No details, no statement, just a photograph of the pit, now half filled with murky water. The caption read, "Area to be permanently sealed." That should have been the end of it. But a month after that, the company courier delivered a box to my door. No return address. Inside were my air meter, a hard hat, and a flash drive. The note on top said only, "You left this running." I didn't want to plug it in, but curiosity always wins. The video file opened on blackness, then my own flashlight beam jittering across stone. I remembered dropping it when the floor gave way. The camera must have. Kept recording. The footage showed a slow slide down rubble, the light swinging until it faced the tunnel. Then, for several minutes, nothing. Just dripping water and that low hum. Near the end, a shape crossed in front of the lens. A human shape. Helmet. Boots. It walked toward the water and knelt, motion slow, careful, like someone praying. When it turned its head, the beam caught the face. It was mine. The screen froze there. The frame stuttered once, twice. Then the video ended. I dropped the drive into a cup of coffee and watched the bubbles rise until it stopped working. After that, I moved out of the apartment and rented a room in another town. No more quarry work. No more reports. I started sleeping again a few hours each night. No dreams. But sometimes, when a train passes or when I stand too close to concrete walls, I feel that vibration returning. a heartbeat that isn't mine. If I tap the wall once, softly, it always taps back. I've stopped answering because I think that's what the pit wants. Not bodies, not machines, just attention. So if you ever drive past Hollow Ridge and hear 3 knocks echo up from the ground, don't wait for the rest. Keep driving. Leave the silence alone. Because once you listen long enough, the earth starts to remember your rhythm. And when it does, it will want you back. The sound beneath Stillwater Quarry. Welcome. You have entered a spooky universe where stories never sleep and shadows never fade. Let's blend your like and subscribe into Spooky Universe. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? And what time is it for you right now? I've always found that question fascinating because no matter where you are, when the lights go out and the night grows cold, the same darkness finds us all. Let the shadows rise and rule. When I took the contract at Stillwater Quarry, I told myself I needed the money more than I needed sleep. That was before I knew what lived in the rock. The company called itself Northline Reclamation. They were tearing out the old quarry to make room for a reservoir. My job was simple: night security, 12-hour shifts, no visitors, no cameras, just me, a flashlight, and the sound of my own breathing. The first night was quiet, too quiet. Most quarries have a voice wind howling through rebar, loose stone cracking as it cools. Stillwater had none of that. It was perfectly still, like the entire pit was holding its breath. The foreman, a man named Cole, met me at the gate. He was pale in the work light, sweat shining across his forehead even though the air was cold. "Stay out of the central shaft," he said. "What's wrong with it?" I asked. He glanced toward the darkness below. "Nothing. It's finished. That's the problem." The floodlights painted everything, the color of bone. Every wall looked smooth, too smooth for natural cut rock. When I walked the perimeter, my boots sent echoes tumbling down into the dark until they faded into something softer, not an echo at all, more like a reply. Around 2 a.m., I heard a noise from the lower deck, a long metallic groan that didn't match any of the machinery. When I reached the railing, the air felt thicker. The crane lights were still. But somewhere below, water moved a slow ripple that caught the light and died. I shone my flashlight down. For an instant, the beam touched something white on the wall halfway to the bottom. A handprint. Then it slid away, as if wiped clean. The second night, I brought a thermos and a notebook, anything to pass the hours. Cole handed me the keys and said they'd be drilling again in the morning. "If you hear anything, radio the office. Don't go looking." He didn't wait for me to answer. By midnight, fog had filled the pit. It didn't roll like normal fog. It hung there, trapped halfway down, turning the quarry into 2 halves. The living above, the drowned below. Somewhere inside that fog, something knocked. 3 times, evenly spaced, deep enough that I felt it through the railing. Then again, 3 beats, a pause, 3 more, a rhythm you could almost breathe to. When it stopped, I heard another sound behind me, stone grinding. The access gate to the shaft was open. I know I closed it. Inside, the air tasted of dust and electricity. My flashlight caught the carved numbers on the wall depth markers the drill teams had left years ago. 60 meters, then 70, then a scrawl of chalked initials, H. Cole. Below that, something new, written with the point of a knife. Stop digging. I kept the light moving and saw that the floor wasn't solid anymore. Someone had cut a narrow trench straight down, maybe another 10 feet. Water shimmered at the bottom. Every few seconds, a bubble broke the surface and released that same 3-beat knock. When I leaned over, the flashlight flickered and died. The bubble, darkness pressed close, thick as fabric, and from below came a whisper, soft but clear. Still water keeps. I got out of there fast. Back at the gatehouse, the radio crackled to life on its own. A voice whispered through static, repeating that same phrase until the battery died. I sat in the dark until dawn, watching the mist drain from the pit, like blood from a wound. Cole didn't come back. No one did. A message from the company arrived instead. Site closed until further notice. But every night after that, I woke to the sound of knocking 3 beats. Pause. 3 beats coming from the pipes beneath my floor. The sound beneath Stillwater Quarry continued. It got worse after the second week. The sound didn't stay under the floor anymore. It followed me, inside walls, through water pipes. Once, I heard it vibrating inside the frame of my truck, like something alive behind the metal. I tried to record it. At first, the microphone picked up nothing but static. Then, buried under the hiss, came a faint breath. When I slowed the file down, it formed words. Still water keeps. I deleted the file. By morning, it was back on the recorder, time-stamped 2 hours in the future. I drove out to the quarry one last time, hoping to end the noise by seeing the place in daylight. But when I arrived, the gate was gone. So were the machines. The only thing left was a sign nailed to the fence post. Property of Northline Reclamation, do not enter. Below it, scratched into the metal, were 6 small letters, still keeps. The pit itself had changed. Where there had been open air, now water filled the bowl nearly to the rim, dark, mirror flat, no ripples even in the wind. A new dock floated at the edge, just wide enough for 1 man and a small boat. Someone had left oars inside. I told myself I just wanted one last look, closure. But the silence around that place was too clean, too practiced, like a mouth waiting to swallow sound. When I stepped onto the dock, it barely moved. The water below seemed solid, as if the pit had frozen from the bottom up. I leaned forward and looked down. My reflection blinked. I hit the deck hard, flashlight rolling away. When I dared to look again, the surface was still, the reflection calm, normal. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe nerves. But then I saw a ripple move across the water even though I hadn't touched it. It came from the center, spreading toward me in perfect circles. Each time it reached the dock, the wood pulsed under my hands like a heartbeat. I tried to back away, but the oar handles shifted, as if someone underneath had brushed against them. Then came the knock. Not 3 beats this time, 1, slow and deep. The entire dock trembled. I ran. Halfway to the truck, the hum followed me through the gravel, rising until the air itself vibrated. When I turned, the water was perfectly still again. But at the center, where the ripples had begun, something pale floated just beneath. To the surface. It was the shape of a man, motionless, face turned upward. The light hit the water and vanished. The shape sank without breaking the surface. That night, the radio came alive again. Through the static, Cole's voice whispered, "Still water keeps." Then another voice joined his mind, repeating the same words in perfect unison. After that, the recording cut off. I threw the radio out. When I woke, it was back on the nightstand, clean, plugged in, the dial glowing faint blue. I decided to leave the state. Sold the truck, packed light, rented a small apartment near the coast. For a while, it worked. The silence felt natural again. No knocks, no hum. Until one evening when the landlord came to fix the plumbing. He drained the old pipes and looked up at me from under the sink. "You've got sediment building," he said. "From where?" I asked. He scraped a handful of white dust from the trap and frowned. "Limestone. But there's no limestone around." That night, the knocking started again. Soft, muffled, coming from behind the bathroom wall. 3 beats, a pause, 3 more. When I pressed my ear against the tiles, I could hear water moving inside, though I hadn't turned on the tap. I sat in the dark, listening, until the rhythm changed. It wasn't knocking anymore. It was breathing. And underneath that breath, faint but steady, a whisper spoke through the pipe. "Still water keeps." I moved again 6 months later. Different city, different building. I never tell anyone my address now. But sometimes, when the plumbing sighs or the floor vibrates after rain, I know it's still there, that hum beneath the world, waiting. Places like Stillwater Quarry don't end when they flood. They just spread, one pipe, one echo at a time. And if you ever feel a vibration under your feet that matches your heartbeat, don't stop to listen. Because still water doesn't forget. It keeps. If the room feels a little too still right now, that's normal. Quarries don't stop the moment you finish the story. They wait to see who kept listening. If anything hums after this video ends, your desk, your wall, even the air in your chest, don't knock back. Don't call out. Don't try to make sure. Hollow Quarry learned your rhythm the moment you hit play. And places like that never forget the ones who listen. If you want to keep walking deeper into stories like this, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what would you do if the ground whispered your name? Let the shadows rise and rule. This is a spooky universe. Asterisk, asterisk.